feel like I should be wearing the cardigan for this. There we go. That's history like the cardigan. I do not look good. Welcome back, everybody, to History with Salty B, Episode 3. This is probably the last episode of 2025, and one I've been very excited to make. I have notes here of what we're going to go through. We're kind of finding our feet a little bit with this series, so we're going to start with a haul. It's going to be the smallest yet, with only one book, and it's arguably, probably not even arguably, not a history book. So you'll see that in a second. After the haul, we will get into the second segment, I guess, of periods in European history that I find interesting, which the acronym, or sorry, periods in European history I find interesting. We cut the that because the acronym is now Pi Hi Phi, P-I-E-F-I, P-I-E-H-I-F-I. So for Pi Hi 2, we are going to be talking about the Romanov dynasty, which ruled Russia from 1613 all the way to 1917. And this is, I guess you could say, my citation, my resources for this segment is the book The Romanovs by Simon Sebag Montefiore, which I finished about a week ago. It took me about 2 weeks to get through it, and really, really enjoyed it. So I'm going to talk all the way from Michael the First to Nicholas the Second, and tell you what's going on here, because in the last episode I was like, what is going on with the great to the great, Peter the Great to Catherine the Great? The succession, as you can see, is all over the place. So I now have the answers for you. After that, I like to talk about a theme every episode. So this episode, we'll be talking about royal indulgence, and I'll get into what that means a little bit later. I might point it out a few times during the Romanovs segment, but yeah, we'll be talking about royal indulgence. After that, I totally forgot to talk about the Accursed King series in episode 2. So I'd read books 1, 2, and 3 before episode 1, then book 4 and 5 before episode 2, and I forgot to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about book 4 and 5, and I've since read another book after the Romanovs, and now I'm back on the Accursed King series with The Lily and the Lion, book 6 of that series, the penultimate book. Then, after the Accursed King section, I will talk about Metropolis, which is the book I read after the Romanovs and before the Lily and the Lion. Metropolis, it's basically a history of the world through cities, and the book's title is Metropolis, the history of the city, humankind's greatest invention, something like that. And it was fantastic. I really liked it. It was a shorter one. Got through it in about 2 days of work, and really, really fun. It basically goes through all of world history with focus on one aspect of cities' growth in that time period, and what city or cities were the most influential during that section of history. And then finally, to end the episode, I'm nervous about this part. Fahad recommended that I do a reading for the $10 bangers that I find. A little reading of just a part of the book, maybe the preface or introduction. Well, I'm going to do a reading of my favorite section of the book that I'm showing in the hall today. So we will end this video with me reading to you. It's probably maybe 5 pages, so it's probably gonna be a 10-minute long Salty B put your ass to sleep with a good book. George R.R. Martin's Blood and Fire. So this is an $8 version that I found, just a little one. You can see it's just a little tiny one, paperback, words all crammed in there. I told this story in episode 1 of this series. I watched Game of Thrones last summer into fall 2024, and then in the winter I hadn't yet read the main A Song of Ice and Fire series, but I wanted to know more about the Targaryen dynasty that's talked about in Game of Thrones, and I found out that there was this history book about them. So I bought it, and I loved it. I read through it. I listened through it back in probably November, December, probably a year ago of 2024. And then I got into Game of Thrones, like the actual books then after that. But this was the first one I read. And because it, first of all, the series itself is based off of world history, right? The plot of Game of Thrones isn't too far off of the real world War of the Roses. But what I loved about Fire and Blood was that it's an actual history book, and I was like, man, I liked the writing. I saw some reviews. They were saying like, oh, it's written like this, like a boring history book. It's not like the other Game of Thrones books. And I was like, I loved that about it. It was awesome. And so I got into more history. And after Fire and Blood, I listened to Ice, Fire, and Iron, I think it's called, by Ed West. And that is a book. It's called The Real World History of Game of Thrones. And it's basically the connection. It's like Fire and Blood, the pipeline here. Game of Thrones, Fire and Blood, the real world history of Game of Thrones, and then actual history. So there's the pipeline. And so this is what started. This is what got me into having these posters on my wall. Because I was like, wow, fake history is so great. Imagine real history. So I will end today's episode. We'll see. I mean, I don't like these to go over an hour, but I'll end today's episode by reading you my favorite section. Just favorite, like a little 5-page section of Fire and Blood. And I'll give you all the context you need. I know it's a fantasy book, so there might be stuff you're like, wait, what was that? What did you just say? Who are these people? But I think you'll still enjoy like the main story, the main themes of this section that I'm going to read to you. But first, we got to go to class. So I've got the chart up here. I've got the European history timeline here. This is Russia. It's Peter the Great. Shout out Matt Baker of usefulcharts.com. Although, I got my eye on you, Matt, because I found a mistake in one of these, or at least like somebody is omitted from this chart. Stay tuned to find out who. So I'm going to go through the chart here. I'm not going to let you look at this. I'm actually going to put up the Romanovs family. Like I'll put up a better version of this up right now. So there you go. And now I'm going to get talking about the Romanovs. So the House of Romanov was a noble family. Obviously, I mean, they didn't just come up from peasants, but they were a noble family in the early 1600s when the time of troubles began. That was when Ivan the Terrible and his son, kind of their line ended, and then there were multiple, what's the word? Imposters? There were multiple imposters who claimed to be Feodor the First, and I think it was like two guys, like both came up and became Tsar as Feodor the First, and then both times were ousted, and then a lot of other people claimed the throne. The King of Poland claimed the throne at one point and was Tsar, or claimed to be Tsar, when a bunch of people showed up to Michael Romanov's house and said, and this isn't exactly true, but it's something like your grandpa was or his grandma is the sister to Ivan the Terrible, or something like that. His grandma is the sister to Ivan the Terrible. Actually, it's on this chart. Okay, it's on this chart. So, yeah, I got it right. His grandpa was to Ivan the Terrible's wife. Okay, so his grandpa was the brother of Ivan the Terrible's wife. It's on that chart. Of course it is. What am I talking about? So Michael I became the Tsar of Russia. They chose him. They said, you're the, you have a claim to the throne. That obviously there's tons of people that could have been put in his position, and a few had, and it had not gone well for him. So Michael did not want to be Tsar. He didn't want to be Tsar at all. His mother and him are like sobbing when they show up to their house. They're like, we're taking you back to Moscow. So he was a reluctant Tsar. Like, he did not want to be it. But it worked out for him. He could have died within the year and been assassinated or something, but no, it worked out for him. He establishes the dynasty. I've just got some notes here just to make sure I know what I'm talking about. And yeah, he kind of united Russia after this time of troubles. His son, Alexei is the Russian name. Alexis is how we would say it, and that's what it is on the chart. So Alexis was his son, and Alexis did a great job to just further solidify, and it helped Russia to have two kings over a 50-year period, right? I think 53 years. So this really helped them kind of unite over a crown again. Alexei was very pious, very law, like kind of glory to God and orthodox. The rituals and stuff are crazy. One of my favorite parts of the book was hearing all these rituals. And the Tsar was kind of I don't know, he was almost like a puppet to the church, which is like how it should be if you think about it, because like he's chosen by God. It's like, isn't he his puppet then? But yeah, there are tons of accounts of different czars, especially these early ones, where they're basically just like a person that gets worshipped, and there's big extravagant parades and all this kind of stuff, and his job is to like sit on the throne for like days at a time during these ceremonies and stuff like that, and it just sounds awful. And last thing about Alexis was serfdom. So serfdom, basically it's slavery, but like not quite as bad, but also kind of as bad because it's on such a large scale. It basically just meant that like peasants were all serfs, and they are tied to the land they live on, like their house. They can't leave. They are forced to stay there and work the fields for some lord, right? And the difference between a peasant and a serf is like a peasant could move, a serf can't. Like a serf, like you are not allowed to leave your land. You are forced. So it's slavery, right? Alexei kind of solidified that as Russia's main kind of to keep the engine going. He solidified serfdom, and that meant that Russia's army was made up of serfs almost completely, and all their food is serfs. So it's like any serf uprising or any war, honestly, Russia were kind of at a disadvantage. So serfdom, not the best thing, and later czars would try and get rid of this. So next up was Fyodor III. He was the eldest son of Alexis, and even his grandpa was a czar at this point. So the dynasty is kind of solidified, and every now and then in history you get kings, czars, whatever like this. Fyodor didn't really want to be king. Like, he liked the power, he liked being able to do whatever he wanted, but he kind of just spent his whole reign hunting and giving his all his work to other people, right? To his council. He died very young from I think it was smallpox. And hold on, I've got a note here. I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was smallpox. I can't find it. Whatever. He died. He got sick and died. So then things got interesting, because next up in the line of succession is Ivan. And Ivan, there's a lot of different accounts of what was up with Ivan, but it's pretty obvious with modern knowledge. It's pretty obvious that Ivan was autistic, and the nobles of Russia knew they did not want him to lead the country, right? Like Ivan, he just didn't have the ability to control the biggest land country in the world. And actually, it wasn't at that point; it was close to them. So here's what they did, and this is something that would have never been done in other monarchies of Europe: England, France, Spain. This never would have been done. But because the Romanovs had only been established 2 generations ago, I think the nobles of Russia kind of knew that they could bend the rules. They could choose their monarch. They did. They chose Michael. Why can't we choose someone other than Ivan? But they thought, okay, well, Ivan still is, like, by all the laws, he is our... So here's what we'll do. He's got a younger brother who's, like, quite younger, like 8 years younger or something. Because I think they had different moms. He's got a younger brother, Peter, who is just, he's big, he's energetic, he wants to rule. Like, we all want Peter to be czar. Like everyone wants Peter to be czar. So let's just make them co-monarchs, right? This is something that like is so rare in history. In English history, there's only one co-monarch situation, and that's Mary II and William III. William III was the Dutch stadtholder who got invited by England to come get rid of their Catholic king, James II. So he did, and then he did it because they told him, like, yeah, we'll give you equal power with Mary, who he's married to. And so they were co-monarchs. And when Mary died, William III reigned for, oh my God, he reigned for 30 years. Or that was total. Sorry, that was total. He reigned for 8 years without her. So for 8 years, England had a Dutch king. without anyone, like without a wife or an English queen or anything, just a Dutch king. That situation is so rare, and the Russians just chose it. They're like, yeah, like let's make Peter, this guy, co-monarchs. And so Peter was the real monarch, right? Like he was the one actually doing stuff, and it kind of freed him up because Ivan then sat through all of the stuff. Ivan was the monarch. He's the eldest, right? Like Ivan was the monarch who sat during the ceremonies, who held the orb and staff, and was worshipped by the people. And Peter was, I mean, he was still worshipped, like obviously, but Peter was then able to go get shit done. And he did. Things about Peter, he was obsessed with westernization, right? He really wanted to westernize Russia. So he took a tour, not like as a czar. He just, he brought a little group of guys and they went off, but like he was not in a carriage or anything. Well, he probably was. He wasn't announcing that he was on his way. That's what I'm saying. It wasn't like a royal progression or something. And he visited all the way to England. He went Holy Roman Empire, France, England, the Low Countries. He went all the way around and learned. He was shocked by boats. That was the biggest thing. He was like, these boats are crazy. And he got back and he built a huge navy. So why is he called Peter the Great? Well, he won the Great Northern War, which you probably can't see it. I'm not going to move the camera, but here's him. And you can see this Swedish section's rather big. And then at the end of that is Peter, and then Russia gets bigger. And that is because they defeated the Swedish Empire in the Great Northern War. And he declared Russia an empire. So now he was Emperor Peter I. And he was also known as the Great. This is crazy. If you take one thing away from this video, Peter the Great was a striking figure. He was really big, and just for context, the average height at the time, this would have been like late 1600s. The average height of the time was 5'4". Now I don't know if that's everybody or male, but I think it might be male. I think the average height of a woman was like 5 foot, and the male was 5'4", because people just didn't eat right, and that's mostly peasants. Obviously, Peter ate good. Like he's the czar. Like he was eating. He was 6'8". 6'8", and that's not like inflation or something. No, like we have those measurements for sure. Peter the Great was 6'8", maybe 6'7" or something with shoes on. I don't know. Maybe they beefed him up a little bit, but still, he was ridiculously tall. And that's something that's really important for ruling. It's being like dominant. It's being tall. It's being like somebody that you look up to and go, oh yeah, they were chosen by God. And people had no problem thinking that Peter the Great at 6'8" was chosen by God. So I think that has to do with something of why he got that title of the Great. I think it's because he won the war. And he's 6'8". I think those two things make it like, of course we call him Peter the Great. Because I have to say, in reading the book, I was a little, I don't know, I guess I thought the Great would be a little bit greater. That's all. The last thing I'll tell you about Peter the Great is him, his whole council, they were all raging alcoholics. There is something of a stereotype with Russians and alcohol, vodka, stuff like that. And I get it. Like, I get where it comes from because for most of Russian history under the Romanovs, like from Peter the Great all the way till, I don't know, like 100 years probably, 16 late 1600s to 1800. That whole period, they're all getting drunk all the time. They talk about people being under the table at meetings and stuff constantly. His first two ministers, which is like his hand, his king, the king's hand type thing. His first two ministers of Peter the Great both died from alcoholism, like alcohol poisoning. And it was at the second one where Peter was like, huh, maybe we should have less ragers, because they would have ragers every night. Like every night they would all get blackout drunk and they rule the country, right? Keep that in mind when I talk about royal indulgences. After Peter the Great, so now we get into the good shit. Like this is, I talked about the great to great, Peter to Catherine, what went on. So now we're into that section. So here's where I have to tell you about the mistake in this graph, or just an omitted character. You can see Peter the Great had Eudoxia was his wife, and they had Peter II, right? Wrong. They had Alexei. Alexei was his son and heir, and Alexei and Peter had a huge falling out. Alexei kind of always hated him, and after this huge falling out, he escaped and went all the way to Austria, and then Peter like called him back and said, if you come back, I won't do anything to you, but if you stay there, like I'm going to kill you. And Alexei came back, and Peter put him in prison and then executed him. So Alexei had a son named Peter. So it should go Peter the Great and Eudoxia. Alexei, who would not have, a box around him, he would not have a crown, but then it would still be a male line to Peter. So Peter II was the grandson of Peter the Great. Okay, so that was something I learned that's wrong about this chart. When Peter the Great died, who should be after him? The royal succession would have a little baby be Tsar, but the Russians don't fuck with that. They will still let that little baby be Tsar one day, but they don't want him right now. And hey, they chose Peter's grandpa to be Tsar. They chose Peter to be co-Tsars. Why can't they choose Peter's successor? So, in a move that is absolutely unbelievable, they chose Peter's second wife to be Tsaress, excuse me. Why her, and who is she? First of all, why her? It's because she was already empress, and she had been empress for a few decades, I feel like. Her and Peter had at least been together for a very long time. And they had two daughters together. And it wasn't really in the Russian people's interest to give power to someone who had no idea what to do with it, didn't know all the ceremonies and everything. So they were like, yeah, let's just give it to his wife. His second wife, right? Which is something that's so rare, like at all. Just be like, yeah, we're not going to give it to the child or anything. No, we're just going to give it to his wife, who has no relation to the Romanovs. Like she's just his wife. So who was she? She was not her first name, but she would take the name Catherine after she married Peter. She was, and I want to get this right. I believe she was a peasant, and I believe she was a former servant and sex slave who became Peter's wife. I also think she was a hairdresser as well, but she was like a hairdresser, prostitute, like she had all that going on, and then she met Peter through being like a what's the word? Fucking him. And then they fell in love. He made her his wife. He made her his empress. And then when he died, they were like, yeah, the peasant empress. So that is one of the greatest stories I've ever heard, is Catherine I being empress for 2 years. Didn't last long because she died of old age. But yeah, for 2 years, she was a peasant empress, which is just amazing. So after her, they said, okay, Peter II, he's 2 years older now. Like, sure, let's give it to him. And oh no, I messed up. Fuck. I'm sorry, guys. I messed up. Peter II, who maybe he was a little bit older than being a baby, but he was like young. he becomes into power when he's 11 years old. So he was 9. He was 9 years old when his grandpa Peter dies. Catherine, they don't want a 9-year-old on the throne. Catherine becomes empress. 2 years later, the empress dies, and then Peter II, he was the one who loved hunting and died of smallpox. So he loved hunting, didn't want to be king, czar, and then died of smallpox. So let me. So Feodor, Feodor was also young and died of an illness. Yeah, he's just kind of not that memorable. 6 years on the throne. Peter II, hunting, smallpox. There we go. So after Peter II, who's going to be czar, right? And for this, they said, okay, well, Ivan the Fifth had kids, right? Like, we didn't really want him to be ruler, but he had kids. He had 2 daughters. We made Peter the Great's kids, or his grandson, a czar, his wife a son. They have daughters together, but let's go back to Ivan the Fifth, right? Like, so they're kind of picking and choosing, and they chose Anna, who was the ruler for 10 years. And this kind of began. I mean, it kind of started with Catherine, but this was the century of empresses. It really was the 1700s. It was the century of empresses. They had 4 when it was all said and done. Anna was the second one. I might mix up a few of them, but Anna, she had a lot of German nobles in her court and was kind of dominated by them. She was a very kind of hands-off empress for 10. I mean, she lasted 10 years. She was already pretty old, kind of like middle-aged to old. And yeah, she didn't do too much crazy, but Russia was on the up. Like, they were doing great. Peter the Great had ruled only 5 years ago, right? Like, Catherine and Peter had ruled after him. But Anna, it's only 5 years since Peter the Great died. The Russian Empire started 9 years before she became empress. So it's early days, and she just kept everything moving. And yeah, there was a lot of Baltic and Germans in their council and stuff, but things went well. Things carried on. After her, she didn't have any kids. So after her great nephew, you can see the chart. This was a baby czar, and not everyone fucked with that. So not even that much longer later, like it says 1940 to 40 or 1740 to 41. It was like a handful of months. Like, I don't think it was that long. A midnight sweep of the castle. A bunch of guards flood in, and they take the baby. They imprison Anna, who's the baby's dad or baby's mom, and they put Elizabeth, Catherine I and Peter the Great's daughter, on the throne. So it's basically Ivan V's daughter is on the throne. After her, it was her great nephew. Now Peter the Great's daughter's on the throne. So it kind of went from one to the other. Elizabeth, she was known as Venus. And actually, let me pull up my Audible, because I will. I'll look at. Oh, do I have to re-download the book? I might not want to do that. I do. Okay, never mind. But she's known as Venus, and that's because she was like the beautiful empress, like just like the most gorgeous empress. Everyone loved her, and she was obsessed with fashion. She would ban certain types of clothing and certain colors. Like, no one in Russia was allowed to wear pink, which is the most empress shit I've ever heard. Like, it's fucking awesome. So she ruled for 21 years. And Russia, under her rule, was really at its peak of partying and prestige and just the glamour of it all. The mid-1700s, like, that was peak Russia, just doing their thing, just being rich. She, for days at a time... Actually, this was Anna. Forgot to mention about Anna. Anna, for every day, she would have... am I allowed to say dwarves? Because that's what they call them in history. Little people. She would have a whole circus of little people come into her court and like perform all day, every day, for a long period. Royal indulgence. Back to Elizabeth. So it's all about it's in the 1760s. Yeah, the 7 Years' War happens during this period, and it goes pretty well for Russia. They are, yeah, it goes well for Russia. So yeah, it's all looking up. After her, it goes through her sister, her son, so another nephew, and that is Peter the Third. Now, Peter the Third was kind of a misfit. He was really into Prussia, who Russia were against in the 7 Years' War, right? And yet he really liked Russia. He liked Frederick the Great, who was the Prussian emperor at this time, and he like gave back a bunch of territory that Russia won against Prussia. He like gave it back. So people didn't really like him. He was also really immature. Like he would pull pranks on people and stuff, and people did not want him as czar. It ended up happening. Obviously, he ended up becoming czar, but people didn't really fuck with him that much. And so his wife, named Catherine, she came up with a plan to kill him, and he ended up being strangled to death, and then Catherine was put on the throne. It happened all smoothly one night, and hold on, let me. It happened one night, and yeah, they killed their czar. They put his wife on the throne. So Peter the First, when he died, his wife got put on the throne, Catherine the First, and Peter the Third, when he died, his wife got put on the throne, Catherine the Second, Catherine the Great. She was kind of like I don't know. She was very like a philosopher type, kind of like she was very well thought, and had more influence on things than the past empresses. Right, the past empresses either just kept things kind of going smooth, or I don't know, partied a lot. So it was Catherine that kind of actually did some stuff. She did get overshadowed by her lovers a lot. She had a lot of different lovers, and nearly all of them found political power and then kind of imposed their will through her. They did extend a lot though. They got all the way down to I think Peter the Great stretched Russia's territory in all directions, like further west, up north to Sweden, down to the Black Sea, and then all the way to the Pacific. I think Catherine the Great, during her time, they got a little bit further into the Black Sea and stuff, and maybe closer to like the stands, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, all those. But yeah, Catherine the Great, she was a great ruler. And another thing, like with these greats, Peter the Great, I was surprised that he wasn't as great as I was expecting. Catherine the Great, same thing. Like I honestly couldn't tell you too much about what she did, other than being this kind of larger than life figure. And it's like herself, like what'd she do? I know she did some stuff because Russia was doing well, but like I couldn't actually tell you. So not as great as I thought. But again, sometimes to be great, you just got to rule for a long time and have things go well. That's what it takes. So her son, through Peter, they had a son together named Paul. Definitely the most hilarious name of a czar. Tsar Paul. He hated his mother for killing his father, right? He had grown up knowing like his mother killed his father to take the throne, and he was very sexist. He didn't think women should have any sort of power, and that stemmed from his mom. And when his mom died, his first thing was to bar any woman. It's called the Salic Law. It's to bar any woman from having the throne of Russia ever again, and there wouldn't be one after Catherine, and that's because of fucking Paul. So Paul, he started ruling, and they actually dropped in the book. Simon drops the Caligula comparison. You know it's not good if you're getting Caligula accusations. Paul was really into the military, alienated a lot of people, and was just kind of like crazy. Like he just was very like he was very paranoid. They describe him as being paranoid constantly, and it's not good if you're paranoid because that means like you have a reason to be paranoid. And he did, just like his dad, same as Pops. They bunch of guards flooded into the castle one day, 5 years after he had been ruler, and they killed him in his bed. It was supposed to be like clean or better, but nah, shit went down. And Alexander, who was his oldest son, saw his mangled body, and that really influenced him a lot. Couple more things about Paul. He was really into the military, right? So he would have daily, I believe it was daily parades with like him standing and stuff. Like he would have that daily. It would just be part of the routine. Maybe it was weekly, but it was like all the time they were doing military parades. And that just shows you're compensating for something, bro. On to Alexander. Alexander was one of the most famous Romanovs. He took down Napoleon. He was the one who took down Napoleon, and he was Napoleon's friend for a while. Then he was his enemy, and then he walked into Paris and took Napoleon. Um, he in a past book I read, I believe it was Europe by Norman Davis. They described Alexander completely different how he comes off in this book, which really taught me the importance of multiple sources. Because in the first one I read, they said like Alexander, they almost described Alexander as Paul. They're like, yeah, he was really like spastic and like would change like mood swings and stuff. And in this book, like he comes off as a really good leader who wasn't the best, but he was thrown in this position by, you know, by birth, and he did his best with what he had, and he defeated Napoleon, right? Like not by himself, obviously, but like he contributed to it. After Peter the First, it was his brother Nicholas the First, and there was actually doesn't show it on this chart, but there was actually a middle brother named Constantine. Constantine was named because Russia thought they were going to take over uh, Constantinople, Istanbul. They thought like because they were very close, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're going to beat the Ottomans any day now. Let's name our son Constantine, and then he can be king of Constantinople." Didn't happen, but his name's still Constantine. When Constantine saw the mangled corpse of his father Paul, he said, "I never want to be czar." And so when Alexander died, he abstained, and he actually was like declared czar for a week before Nicholas finally took it. But yeah, Nicholas, the younger son, took over. He was the most anti-Semitic king and or czar, and the last four czars are all very anti-Semitic, and it starts with Nicholas II. Um, and he was kind of like like the Iron King is a common saying for a king like Nicholas, who was just very like stone cold. His son was a crier, Alexander II. He was a crier, and he would always like, "You can't cry, like, don't be a bitch," right? Uh, so very very militarized society at this time, um, and he had to deal with a revolt immediately, right after uh, he ascended to the throne. He had to deal with a revolt. Like his first day was fighting a revolt. Like he was in the trenches fighting a revolt. Then after that, it was Alexander II. He is the liberator czar because he liberated the serfs. This was something that Nicholas wanted to do, couldn't, and then his son did it within 3 years, I believe, 6 years. And then he survived. So Nicholas, there was a revolt against Nicholas. Well, Alexander had it worse. Alexander II survived 6 assassination attempts, and on the 6th, his carriage was blown up by a bomb. He gets out. Everybody's okay. Some like pedestrians are dead, but he's fine. and he gets out to talk to the guy who threw the bob. Little does he know there's two other guys with bobs, and so the other guy runs up and blows him up. And then the third guy's just standing there with the bob, like, okay, I'm gonna go home. So yeah, he blows up by a bob, and he gets taken back to the castle. Like, Alexander III like watches his father die, and he's got guts everywhere and everything. It's really awful. That part of the book was a little slower because probably until Alexander, you're only halfway through the book, and then the final 4 czars take up the last whole half of the book, so it really slows down. And then right when I was kind of losing my interest, the czar gets blown up. It's like, okay, here we go. Alexander III, he was this massive czar. He was known as the Bear, because Russia has a thing with bears, and he kind of just continued on for the next 13 years. Continued on anti-Semitism, military, I don't know, censorship, right? And then his son, Nicholas II, who, much like Alexander I, watched his father's mangled corpse rot away. Nicholas II watched his grandfather, Alexander II, be blown up by a bomb. So he was really scarred by that. Nicholas II, he was the tragic last czar, the czar during the Russian Revolution. Then him and his family put into a kind of like a house prison, and then eventually one day Lenin sent the order to shoot them all in a shed. And that scene is really brutal because upon the initial firing, the only person that died was Nicholas, and Alexandra, his wife. All the kids were shot and not dead, and then they try and like crawl away, and then they get like bayoneted. It's really awful. And that is the Romanovs. That was the end of the Romanov line. Now, one thing I want to say, you might wonder why there is a Michael the First when there's no Michael the Second, and Alexis, Anna, right, like all these other ones, Elizabeth, all these other ones that there's only one of them. They don't have a number. So why is Michael? Why is Michael I next to him? That's because Nicholas was not technically the last Tsar of Russia. When he abdicated not for his son who had what the fuck is it called? He had a disease where he like bleeds really easily. He was sickly. Let's just say that. Oh man, I need to remember that. I need to know what that's called. He abdicated in favor of his younger brother, Michael. So Michael the Second was actually the last Tsar of Russia. He's not on this chart because he ruled for a day, and then he abdicated as well. But yeah, Michael the Second, or Michael the First, is known as Michael the First because technically there was a Michael the Second for one day at the end of the Romanov dynasty. So there you go. That's the Romanovs. And what do I think overall about them? I think the drama and the lore and the history is awesome. I really, really loved learning about them. And I would highly encourage you to as well, because what I just shared is not, it's not the full picture. It's not anything close to the book. If you want to read The Romanovs by Simon Sebag Montefiore, I highly recommend it. And why is the Russian lore so good? I think it's just something to do with Russia and their ability to choose their own monarch, right? To not play by the exact rules. And that's what built that crazy section from great to great on this chart. So I think that's enough about the Romanovs. I really enjoyed that book, and I do highly recommend it. So getting into royal indulgences, it's really just the idea that when you are given ultimate power, no one can say no to you, all this kind of stuff that a king has, you are able to manipulate and abuse your substances and your vices and the things that make you feel good to the absolute extreme. We all like to do this. We all have vices. We all like to do things or consume things or whatever it is. But a king has absolute power to do whatever he wants, and he can abuse that vice completely. So, royal indulgences, alcoholism. Peter the Great, his ministers, they were all alcoholics. So much of Russia were alcoholics. And that's something that it's not a there's no class boundary for being alcoholic. The serfs too. Their whole life was manual labor, and you're just working to get drunk at the end of the day. Same thing in like industrial England during the Victoria era. They turned people into machines. Like people would just go to the factory and do the same thing all day. No music, no podcast, no audiobook, just fucking same thing all day. And then they get drunk at the end of the day, right? Like that was the life. So, but a royal indulgence, that's when you have unlimited alcohol, unlimited time, right? And that's what Peter would do. They would get blackout drunk at the boardroom meeting every single night, staying up till 7 in the morning, right? That's what they would do. That's how they would run the country. Obesity, I talked about this, how most we don't have to just say this about the Russians. The English kings and queens, they were all obese because you're just sitting around eating, right? Like that's half your job is just to keep living, keep breathing, keep eating. So yeah, like George the Fourth is probably the most infamous obese king. But all of them, I mean, from probably until they started dying of cancer with smoking. I think George the Fifth was probably the first thin king since like I don't even know, William the Third. That's like 300 years. And he was only thin because he was smoking. So, and then him and all of the last five sovereigns of the UK have all died of cancer. So, and then lust is a huge one. The Russians were fucking. It's crazy. All kings and queens. Well, I mean, all medieval kings were expected to have mistresses. That was just how it is. Like you want your king to be like the masculine guy, right? So it's like, oh, we need our king to be making sons, but that's not enough for him. His wife's pregnant for 9 months. Who's he gonna fuck then? So he has a bunch of mistresses, right? That's how it is. The Russians took this to the extreme where all of the nobles, they were all going behind each other's backs, fucking each other. And it wasn't even like a problem. Like I feel like, yeah, there were a few times where someone would get arrested, like you slept with the empress, like you're going to jail, buddy. But honestly, it felt like it was mostly they all knew, and it was just part of life that people are having affairs and behind each other's backs. Like you can make the craziest soap opera about the Russian nobility and the court of some of these emperors and empresses. And that's the lust coming in. Like you're rich, you can have sex with anyone you want. You can, right? Catherine the Great, she was having some younger men. I'll tell you that much. Then entertainment. I mentioned entertainment. Imagine how boring the 16, 17, 1800s were compared to our modern day, right? Imagine how boring they were. Anna, she would have circuses performing for her all the time, just constantly. She just wanted to be entertained, eating, entertainment, drinking, entertainment, eating again. That was their lives. This is what I'm talking about, royal indulgence. Like when reading this book, I realized, I'm like, wow, like we all do the same thing. We like to, binge eat. We like to get drunk and party. We like to have sex. We like to do all the same things that the kings and queens are doing. And entertainment, right? Watching a circus while you eat, that's like watching a YouTube video while you eat right now in the modern day. They are doing all the same things we do now, but they just had unlimited power to do it. Yeah, I think there's something to be said about royal indulgence and like how, I don't know, I feel like throughout history, probably like 80% of sovereigns had some sort of vice that crippled them in some capacity, whether it was sex, food, alcohol, partying, or just like hunting, like just like I don't want to be king, I'm gonna go hunt forever. I think that the royal indulgences of the Russian monarchs and others really were a big part of most kings and queens' lives, and it's just a pattern that I've recognized throughout reading all this history. On to the accursed kings. We're already getting close to the hour mark, so I will try and speed this bit up. But the accursed kings is the original Game of Thrones, as they slap on every cover of all the books in the series. As soon as George R. R. Martin said that, they were like, "Holy shit! Put that on everything." The original Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin, put that before the title. And yeah, it's about the end of the Line of Capet. I'm actually at the point in the books where the Line of Capet has ended. But that's before book 4 and 5. The best shit ever happens in book 4. Spoilers. I knew that Louis X, who dies while his wife is pregnant, I knew that she has a son, and that son is Jean the First, and Jean dies after only 5 days. Fun fact, he's the only king of France to rule for his entire lifetime. He's also the youngest king of France, and the shortest ruling king of France, I think. 5 days. Maybe the French Revolution has someone beat there, but yeah. Jean the First, he dies after 5 days. In this book, they because it's a fictionalization, it's a dramatization of these real world events, kind of taking all like the most dramatic versions of the tales and putting them into this book. So Jean the First gets swapped out for another baby. So the real Jean the First, the real King of France, and the continuation of the Line of Capet in the senior branch, is living on an Italian farm somewhere, which is amazing. One thing that I did find weird about the books, because the books 4 and 5, like it has been a little bit since I've read them, I didn't really have much to actually talk about. I really just want to mention the baby swapping thing because it's so awesome. The story is incredible. There's all these characters, and you meet so many of the characters in book 1, and they really carry on all the way through the series. Other characters come in and out or are introduced, but for the most part, like you kind of learn all the characters, and then it's just this huge political drama for all 7 books, and it's fantastic. And they're not that big; they're pretty short. I got through them pretty fast. I think I'm only halfway through book 6. I started a day ago or 2 days ago. So yeah, A Curse of the King series, really great. The only thing I'll say about it is the time jumps are a little weird, and there's a little jarring sometimes where it's like the entirety of book 4 is Philip, who's the younger brother of Louis, securing the throne, and then the next book starts and he's been dead for like 6 years. It's like, what? So some jarring moments like that, but it's also heavily, the later books especially, heavily tied into the English throne, because I mean they were speaking French too. They're pretty intertwined, and that goes through the rumored death of Edward II, where he had a hot poker inserted up his ass to kill him. This was done for 2 reasons. First of all, he was gay, and I guess that's just how you kill a gay person in the 1300s, sticking something up his ass. And second of all, they didn't want to show a mark on his body, so they did that because everyone heard the screaming outside the castle, and they're like, okay, that's them killing the king. And then they asked to see him, and then they show him, they're like, look, he just randomly screamed and died in the middle of the night. And it's like, huh, there's no marks. I guess he's telling the truth. So that's hilarious. So yeah, that's the Accursed Kings. I'm reading book 6 now, and so the next time I talk about it, I will be done the series, and I'll do kind of like a full series review, I guess. On to Metropolis, and do I save this? Do I save this and do this another time, and just get into the? Yeah, you know what? I will. I've got notes on Metropolis, so I don't mind talking about it in a month. I will save talking about Metropolis for the next episode, episode 4. So let's get into the reading of George R. R. Martin's Fire and Blood. This is page 229. And the context you need is there's an island off the coast of Westeros, on the western side, or the eastern side, sorry, where the Targaryen dynasty used to be before they lived there for like 300 years after fleeing Valyria, which blew up. And they were now the only dragon lords. They were there for like 200, 300 years before Aegon the Conqueror conquered, Westeros. So this is the what do they call it? The ancestral seat of House Targaryen. That's what they always call it. So this is on the island of Dragonstone, where currently Rhaena, who is a queen mother, an ex-queen of the current king, or maybe she's his aunt. Anyway, she was a queen, and now she's living in the castle on Dragonstone. And this is just a little one of my favorite parts of the book. I'm gonna back you guys up here for a second. You can see the box. Okay. Across Blackwater Bay on Dragonstone, Rhaena Targaryen had found new griefs awaiting her when she returned from Storm's End. Far from being a joy and a comfort to her, as Daenerys was to Alysanne, those are a previous daughter and queen, her own daughter Arya had become a terror and a willful wild child who defied her septa, her mother, and her maesters alike, abused her servants, absented herself from prayers, lessons, and meals without leave, and addressed the men and women of Rhaena's court with such charming names as Sir Stupid, Lord Pigface, and Lady Farts-a-Lot. Her Grace's husband, Andrew Farman, though less vocal and openly defiant, was no less angry. When word first reached Dragonstone, when Queen Elisa was failing, Andrew had announced that he would be accompanying his wife to Storm's End. As her husband, he said, his place was at Rhaena's side, to give her comfort. The queen had refused him, however, not gently. A loud argument had preceded her departure, and her Grace was heard to say, "The wrong Farman ran away," because Farman's sister had run away. Andrew Farman was no longer the lad that Rhaena had married 5 years earlier on Fair Isle, when he was 10 and 17. The comely stripling had become puffy-faced, round-shouldered, and fleshly. Never well regarded by other men, he had found himself forgotten and ignored by their lordly host during Rhaena's wanderings in the west. Dragonstone proved to be no better. His wife was still a queen, but no one mistook Andrew for a king, or even a lord consort. Though he sat at Rhaena's side during meals, he did not share her bed. That honor went to her friends and favorites. His own bedchamber was in an altogether different tower from hers. The gossip at court was the queen had told him this was better that they slept apart, so he need not be disturbed if he found some pretty maid to warm his bed. There is no indication he ever did this. His days were as empty as his nights. Though he had been born upon an island and now lived upon another, Andrew did not sail, or swim, or fish. He failed squire, he had no skills with sword or axe or spear, so when men of the castle garrison trained each morning in the yard, he kept in his bed. Thinking that he might be of the bookish disposition, Maester Culpeper tried to interest him in the treasures of Dragonstone's library, the ponderous tomes and old Valyrian scrolls that had fascinated King Jaehaerys, only to discover that the queen's husband could not read. Andrew rode passably well, and from time to time would have a horse saddled so he might trot about the yard, but he never passed beyond the gates to explore Dragonstone's rocky paths, or the far side of the island, nor even the fishing village and docks beneath the castle. He drinks a deal, Maester Culpeper wrote to the Citadel, and he has been known to spend entire days in the chamber of the painted table, moving painted wooden soldiers about the map. Queen Rhaena's compassions are wont to say that he is planning his conquest of Westeros. They do not mock him in his face for her sake, but they titter at him behind his back. The knights and men-at-arms pay him no mind whatsoever. The servants obey him, or not, as they please, with no fear of his displeasure. The children are the cruelest, as children often are, and none half so cruel as Princess Arya. She once emptied a chamber pot upon his head, not for anything he did, but because she was wroth with her mother. I love that word. Andrew Farman's discontent on Dragonstone only grew worse after his sister's departure. Lady Elisa had been his closest friend, mayhaps his only friend. That's his sister. Culpeper observed, and despite his tearful denials, Rhaena found it hard to accept that he had played no role in the matter of her dragon eggs. Oh yeah, she lost some dragon eggs. Just Game of Thrones shit, you know. When the Queen dismissed Sir Merrill Bullock, Andrew had asked her to appoint him commander of the castle garrison in Bullock's place. Her Grace had been breaking her fast with 4 of her ladies-in-waiting at the time. The women burst into laughter at his request, and after a moment, the queen had laughed as well. When Rhaena flew to King's Landing to inform King Jaehaerys of the theft of the dragon eggs, Andro had offered to accompany her. His wife refused him scornfully. What would that serve? What possibly could you do but fall off the dragon? Queen Rhaena's denial of his wish to go with her to Storm's End was but the latest and the last in a long string of humiliations for Andro Farman. By the time Rhaena returned from her mother's deathbed, he was well past any desire to comfort her. Sullen and cold, Andro sat silent at meals and avoided the queen's company elsewise. If Rhaena Targaryen was troubled by his sulks, she gave little sign of it. She found consolation in her ladies instead, in old friends like Samantha Stokeworth and Elaine Royce, and newer companions like her cousin Lyanna Valerian, Lord Stonston's pretty daughter Cassella, and young Septon Merriam. What peace they helped her find proved short-lived. Autumn had come to Dragonstone, as to the rest of Westeros, and with it came the cold winds from the north and the storms from the south raging up the narrow sea. The darkness settled over the ancient fortress, a gloomy place even in summer. Even the dragons seemed to feel the damp. And as the year waned, the sickness came to Dragonstone. It was not the sweating sickness, nor the shaking sickness, nor grayscale, Maester Culpepper pronounced. The first sign was a bloody stool, followed by a terrible cramping in the gut. There were a number of diseases that it could have been, he told the queen. Which of those might be to blame he never determined, for Culpepper himself was the first to die. Less than 2 days after he began to feel ill, Maester Anselm took his place, though his age was to blame. Culpepper had been closer to 90 than 80 and not strong. Cassella Staunton was the next to succumb. However, she had been but 4 and 10. Then Septim Merriam sickened, and Elaine Royce, and even big, bolsterous Sam Stokeworth, who liked to boast that she had never been sick a day in her life. All 3 died in the same night, within hours of one another. Rhaena Targaryen herself remained untouched, though her friends and dear companions were being felled one by one. It was her Valyrian blood that saved her, Maester Anselm suggested. Ailments that carried off ordinary men in matters of hours could not prevail against the blood of the dragon. Males also seemed largely immune to this queer plague. Aside from Maester Culpepper, only women were struck down. The men of Dragonstone, be they knights, scullions, stableboys, or singers, remained healthy. Queen Rhaena ordered the gates of Dragonstone closed and barred. As yet, no sickness was beyond her walls, and she meant for it to stay that way to protect the small folk. When she sent word to King's Landing, Jaehaerys acted at once, commanding Lord Valerian to send forth his galleys to make certain no one escaped to spread the pestilence beyond the island. The king's hand did as commanded, though not without grief, for his own young niece was amongst the women still on Dragonstone. Lyanna Valerian died even as her uncle's galleys were pushed off from Driftmark. Maester Anselm had purged her, bled her, and covered her with ice, but all to no avail. She died in Rhaenyra Targaryen's eyes, convulsing as the queen wept bitter tears. "You weep for her," Andro Farman said, when he saw the tears on his wife's face. "But would you weep for me?" His words woke with fury in his queen. His words woke a fury in the queen. Lashing him across the face, Rhaena commanded him to leave her alone, declaring that she wanted to leave her, demanding that she wanted to be alone. "You shall be," Andro said. "She was the last of them." Even then, so lost was the queen in her grief that she did not realize what had happened. It was Rhaego Draz, the king's Pentoshi coinmaster, who first gave voice to suspicions when Jaehaerys assembled his small council to discuss the deaths on Dragonstone. Reading over Maester Anselm's accounts, Lord Rhaego furrowed his brow and said, "Sickness? This is no sickness. A weasel in the guts, dead in a day. This is the tears of Lys." "Poison?" King Jaehaerys said in shock. We know more of such things in the free cities," Draz assured him. "It is the tears, no doubt. The old maester would have seen it soon enough. That's why he had to die first. That's what I would have done. Not that I would have. Poison is dishonorable. Only women were struck down, objected Lord Valyrian. Only women got poisoned, then, said Rico Draz. When Septon Barth and Grand Maester Bennifer conferred with Lord Rigo's words, the king dispatched a raven to Dragonstone. Once Rhaena Targaryen read his words, she had no doubt. Summoning the captain of her guard, she commanded that her husband be found and brought to her. Andro Farman was not to be found in his bedchamber, nor the queen's, nor the great hall, nor the stables, nor the sept, nor Aegon's garden. In Sea Dragon Tower, in the maester's chamber, under the rookery, they discovered Maester Albson dead, with a dagger between his shoulder blades. With the gates closed and barred, there was no way to leave the castle, save by dragon. My worm of a husband does not have the courage for that, Rhaena declared. Andro Farman was located at last in the chamber of the painted table, a longsword clutched in his grasp. He made no attempt to deny the poisonings, instead boasting, I brought them cups of wine, and they drank. They thanked me, and they drank. Why not? A cupbearer? A serving man? That's how they saw me. Andro the Sweet, Andro the Jape. What could I do but fall off the dragon? Well, I could have done a lot of things. I could have been a lord. I could have made laws and been wise and given you counsel. I could have killed your enemies, as I easily killed your friends. I could have given you children. Rhaena Targaryen did not deign to reply to him. Instead, she spoke to her guards, saying, Take him and geld him, but staunch the wound. I want his cock and balls fried up and fed to him. Do not let him die until he has eaten every bite. No, Andro Farman said, as they moved around the painted table to grasp him. My wife can fly, so can I! And so he slashed ineffectively at the nearest man, back to the window behind him, and leapt out. His flight was a short one, downward, to his death. Afterward, Rhaena Targaryen had his body hacked to pieces and fed to her dragons. So that's one of my favorite sections of Fire and Blood. It's just it's really fun. It's a little murder mystery, and you don't even know it yet because it's like a sickness. It's so obvious once you've read it. It's like, oh yeah, they talk about Andro being this kind of I don't know, he's kind of like an incel. He's kind of like an incel, right? Just stays at home all day, and then his wife doesn't like him anymore, and she's got all these friends, and then he poisons all of her friends. That's crazy. He's a serial killer. He becomes a serial killer, and then he kills himself. And it's just the first time I read that, I was just like, oh my god, that was crazy. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of History with Salty B. A little bit of fake history to end us off there, but it's all fun. I hope you enjoyed the Romanovs and all that. And in the next episode, I will talk about Metropolis, which is more about cities and kind of the history of cities, as well as the wrap-up of the Accursed King series. And I won't say what we'll talk about for periods in European history I find interesting, part 3. But I'm sure I'll find a period that I find interesting. Maybe we'll just talk about the Accursed Kings period. That could work. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next episode of History with Salty B. I'm like, hey, what's up? Goodbye.